Back here now on the show to dive into the second segment of the show. But before I get into the UNC and Washington Pro Day, I forgot to mention the news that broke before I got here to the studio. I won't use the breaking news graphic I have because it's not really breaking news at this moment. It doesn't hit the same if I use it now with this news that broke a few hours ago. But Hassan Reddick was traded to the New York Jets from the Philadelphia Eagles for a third round pick that could become a second round pick. I'm guessing on playing time, but I wanted to mention that on here because it is pretty big because Hassan Reddick has been a topic on this show before, and where he would end up going, it was still a mystery. Now it's determined. I said it was going to happen before probably April 1st when he was due a roster bonus. So that gets done. The Jets and the Eagles essentially trade pass rushers. Bryce Huff went to the Eagles. Now Hassan Reddick goes to the New York Jets. So that's the biggest thing that happened. I forgot to mention that in the first segment, but I wanted to make sure to bring that up. But anyway, getting to UNC and the Washington Pro Days that happened yesterday, the biggest attractions were Drake Maye and Michael Penix for good reason. Starting with Washington's Pro Day, it was yesterday, like I mentioned. Rome Odunze is the other highly touted prospect that people would want to see, but he said that he wasn't going to do anything at their pro day because he did all the training and did all the workouts at the NFL Combine. So he chose to sit out yesterday. So it was really all about Michael Penix and how he threw, most of all, and how he tested athletically because I think most people didn't expect him to run a 40 or broad jump or vertical jump, but he did it all. He did all three of those, unlike the other quarterbacks, the top six quarterbacks that didn't do a broad jump, a vertical jump, or much less ran the 40. Michael Penix did all of that, and very impressive results coming from that for Michael Penix. The official times, they're still out there because everyone's got a stopwatch. They don't have an official time for his 40, but it was impressive regardless because it fell between the 4.5 and 4.57 range for a quarterback at his pro day. To run a 40 at that speed, it's insane because I think I saw another wide receiver. I forget it. It's not his name's not going to come to me right now, but another receiver ran a 4.52, and Michael Penix should just be in any sort of range close to a wide receiver in this year's draft is pretty ridiculous. So that already has caught all the attention of everybody that went to his pro day. Then he hit a 36.5-inch vertical and a 10'5" broad jump as well. All those measurements, all those results were better than all the quarterbacks that tested at the combine. So those are athletic tests. Athletically, Michael Penix, you could say, it's up there for the most athletic quarterback just based on these results. It's very impressive seeing it because one of the biggest questions with Michael Penix was his multiple injuries that he's had. He's had a couple ACL injuries at Indiana, which, gives people cause to pause and look at him a little bit sideways, squint, and think maybe he's still carrying those injuries or that could become a problem. But with these results, it doesn't alleviate that concern that you have, but at least it gives you a reaction like, oh wow, those are great. Not only are they great, they're the best out of all the quarterbacks that tested at the combine. So that's very impressive for him. Then on his 40 and all of his athletic tests, Michael Penix said, he reacted to it. He said, I'm a 4.4 guy, in my opinion. Some people had 4.46, some people had 4.5, but that's unofficial, so I'm good. I just showed I can run, so I feel good. That's what he said. Like I mentioned, his mobility and his lower half were some of the questions going into this whole draft process. But that was the athletic test, and he blew everyone out of the water. Throwing wise, he threw about 60 passes at his pro day. He said, and a lot of reports said that he missed about 3 to 5 passes, give or take some. But he included a lot of intermediate, short routes, out routes, slants, go post routes, all that sort of stuff that coaches and scouts like to see at these pro days. The most impressive were obviously the deep balls because That's what he was known for, having a great arm, especially placement of the ball on these deep routes. That's what he was known for. He impressed a lot of people even more with those throws that he had at his pro day. And it all went pretty well for Michael Penix on the day. I'm sure he'll want a couple throws back. If you hear any interviews with him, he'll want a throw or two that he might have overthrown. The ball placement wasn't great, but I think overall the takeaways from this workout are the biggest thing has to be the athletic test, just because nobody expected him to test like that because of his history with injuries. And he comes out and shows everyone that athletically he could be the best one out of the quarterback class. He was teetering on first round, second round-ish. Some reports, I think coming from Jordan Schultz from Bleacher Report, said that one scout came up to him and said that Michael Penix has solidified his place in the first round with all these tests. That's really the main focus of the 40. If you have a crazy 40, regardless of what position you are, people are just going to rank you higher regardless, because that one test, really, it is how crazy, how determinant it is, but the 40 on top of the broad jump, the vertical jump, and his arm talent, that was a report that I saw in making the notes for this. So that's interesting to see if some teams will trade up in the first round because they don't think they'll get him where they sit in the second round. That's another development to watch in this whole quarterback carousel that we have going on. And after his workout, he was seen talking to Brian Dable and Joe Shane from the New York Giants. He told ESPN afterwards that he has visits scheduled with the Giants, the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Broncos, and interestingly enough, the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they didn't have already enough new quarterbacks in their room. That's who he's scheduled to visit with. Rounding it off with Rome Odunze as well. He didn't participate, like I mentioned, but he told ESPN also that after the combine and after he tested, the Giants actually also flew him out to New Jersey, to East Rutherford, and had a meeting with him, probably toured the facility as well, I would imagine. That was one thing before or after the combine, before his pro day. He has visits scheduled after the Washington Pro Day with Arizona, the New York Jets, and the Chicago Bears. Still holding that number 9 pick. He could be an option there. The Cardinals, I don't see them taking him at number 4, but you never know. The Jets also have the pick at 10. Could they get another playmaker for Aaron Rodgers? I'm sure Aaron Rodgers would love that. That's something else to monitor. But overall, the Washington Pro Day went excellent for both of these guys. And now, talking about the UNC Pro Day, Drake Maye as well, another one that hasn't really shown too much in this offseason for scouts or these NFL teams, and he really wanted to make a point out there to show off his arm and show that he can make every throw in the book. A lot of reports coming out after his pro day have said that everybody seemed to be impressed with his skill set that he displayed out there on the field. Bucky Brooks, actually, one of the analysts, I think he was there. If not, he was covering it from somewhere. He called him the prototypical quarterback that you would want in the league. If you were building a guy in Madden as a quarterback, you'd want him to look like Drake Maye, is what he's saying. 6'4", 233 pounds, I think it was. Pat McAfee as well chimed in. He said he's basically Andrew Luck 2.0. A lot of good praise, a lot of high praise for Drake Maye. He's young, which is the biggest concern that teams have, because he had a great season 2 years ago. Then last season, it kind of dipped off a little bit. The accuracy became a problem. And like I mentioned, he's still super young, so can he come in right away to a New England Patriots or a Washington Commanders and take over that franchise and be the franchise quarterback from day one? That still remains the biggest question, but at his pro day, he showed off really what people already sort of knew about him. His arm strength and his arm talent are off the charts. He had a lot of, again, similar throws to Michael Penix, intermediate, short routes, out routes, and stuff like that at different ranges of the field. There were some balls overthrown, some struggles with short and intermediate routes at the start, but he became more comfortable when he started throwing that deep ball, started spreading it out all over the field. That's when it all got good and it all sort of became impressive. the most impressive one I recall was when he threw a 60, 70-yard pass down the field to one of his receivers, right on the money, right in stride. That made all the highlights and headlines, so that is obviously a strong part of his game, the arm, the talent that he has. And after his workout, he said, Drake Maye he said, really, it was my first time working out for these teams. I wanted to give them, this is me, this is Drake Maye, and let it ride. After his workout, it was reported with some of the stories and reports that came out that he threw around 60 or actually 70 to 80 balls compared to the other pro days, which is about 10 or 20 more than some of these quarterbacks threw, which not only tells me that, he has a lot of juice in his arm to throw that many passes in one day and probably not be that tired. It's pretty impressive. A lot of people were left impressed with that, and Mike Garafolo reported afterwards that Maye will have a meeting with the New York Giants in the coming days as well. Not too much was made about other team meetings, but you could imagine that the Commanders will be in there, the Patriots can be in there. I know Drake Maye's spoken highly of the Patriots before, so I'm sure he has a visit planned for them there. New England, speaking about them, had 10 people there, 10 organization members there to watch Drake Maye at Chapel Hill. The Washington Commanders had head coach Dan Quinn there, general manager Adam Peters there, and their offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury there as well. And the Broncos had some people sprinkled in there as well. I think their general manager was present on the day to watch Drake Maye. So after both of these quarterbacks, the biggest takeaway before is with Drake Maye, I think people already knew what they were getting with the arm. I'm sure they saw some things that could be tweaked, but I don't think they saw anything that isn't coachable, isn't fixable with his technique or his throwing mechanics and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure everybody got confirmation that this is the sort of player that everybody envisioned, or at least I envisioned when I'm talking about Drake Maye and where I have him ranked. He did impress with those throws, so that's good. And just showing everybody for the first time, really, since college football ended, how impressive he is with these throws, and just sort of reminding everybody that it's not so cut and dry there at the top of your quarterback list. I'm still here. I can make all these throws, and his size does help as well, trying to determine that. Of course, situation and fits to these quarterbacks absolutely matter. You don't want them going somewhere where they can't really fit. And if that means Drake Maye isn't taken second overall to the Commanders, maybe has to sit behind Jacoby Brissett at number 3, that might seem weird, might not seem right to some people, but it is the best fit, and the best fit and situation is always the way to go with these young quarterbacks, and trying to get the most out of them. Fit, scheme, coaching, all of that matters. Who you have around them matters the most. Same with Michael Penix. I wouldn't draft him personally before the Raiders, or really around the Raiders, because I think first round grade that early, I think if you don't draft him there, if the Raiders sit there and he's still on the board, I think they could wait and draft somebody else, because nobody behind them is going to draft Michael Penix. No one's in dire need of drafting him, especially in the first round. None of those teams should be looking at Michael Penix after the Raiders to draft him in the first round. So they could get a bargain in the second round if then they want to trade up and move, depending on how they see the draft board falling. I think that would be a better investment for these teams looking at Michael Penix after they've been impressed with what they saw. I think that's the way to go with him and Drake Maye as well. But we'll see how it all plays out. We're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. We're about a month away now, I think, exactly, or a little bit less than a month. So I'm looking forward to that, looking to see how this all plays out. But in the meantime, that's all the time I'll have for that segment. There's a lot more to come, though, on today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, the wide receiver market, as well as my over-under picks for the win totals provided by BetMGM later in the show. So a lot of good stuff coming up on today's episode. You're not going to want to miss all that stuff coming up next.